joined by Iwona for another Living Adventurously conversation. We're going to be talking about loads of different things today, but I think first off, Iwona, welcome. And do you want to just start us off by just talking about what got you interested in Quakerism, how your Quaker journey started?
I first got into Quakerism when I was about 22 or 23, and it was maybe a slightly unusual route in that I had been to a number of funerals at that time where I felt like the kind of priest who was like leading the funeral didn't really actually know the person that who the funeral was for, and it felt a little bit kind of empty sometimes, like what like this kind of description of the person, and then we had a family friend round for dinner, and she happened to be talking about her dad's funeral, like years previously, and her dad had been a Quaker, and she was talking about how like everyone had just been able to kind of share, and I thought that sounded like a really nice way to do a funeral. So I looked up like if there was any meeting in the local area. I was living in Reading at the time, and there was, and I went along. I guess I just really liked sitting with other people in silence, in a kind of in a worshipping way, I suppose. Like I was brought up Catholic, but I'd gone away from that in my teens, and then I'd done a bit of like Zen meditation, but I had still felt like maybe there was some kind of something missing, and like going to my first Quaker meeting felt a bit like this is a kind of religious faith experience that fits with me now that I can do. So yeah, that's how I got into it, by funerals. So one of the things that struck me in the first meeting was the kind of a contrast to the Zen meditation that I'd been doing, where the kind of requirement was that you sit as still as possible, and like make as little noise as possible. And like I get that because it's distracting for other people. In doing Zen meditation, it feels like kind of everyone is like individually trying to kind of do their thing and not disrupt it for anyone else. And then when I was in the when I was in the first Quaker meeting, it was really like clear that kind of moving around was okay. Like there were people like maybe coming in a bit late who kind of rustled their bags a bit, or like I think at the end children came in, and again it was like fine for there to be like a bit of noise, and I think for me that acceptance of like just the noise of kind of daily living of like us as human beings was something that kind of I made me feel really comfortable there, and had a kind of there was like a kind of I guess beauty in that acceptance of that, and also helped make it I think feel like it wasn't we were each holding like an individual silence. It was very much like it's this kind of collective silence, and I think for me that sense of the like collective made it maybe kind of closer to what I like in a kind of faith setting. So like I guess like when I was brought up Catholic, one of the things that I liked most was when everyone was singing together in the congregation, and so I suppose that kind of shared silence and acceptance of ourselves as like needing to move around, maybe shift a bit in the silence, yeah, felt closest to singing hymns together, I suppose. With Catholicism, I was like just increasingly felt unable to justify my beliefs. And I know some people say, well, you've got to make the leap of faith, but I wasn't able to for whatever reason. So having a religion where it's about a shared practice, rather than following a specific creed, like really appealed to me. I think the stuff around meeting is maybe has been as important as shaping me and my journey as much as actually going to meetings itself. And by the stuff kind of around the meeting, I mean things like joining in like non-violent direct action, that kind of experience, which I never really anticipated, I suppose, and that
Yeah.
brings a kind of sense of, I think, agency and boldness in what both as an
Mm.
individual and as a collective we can achieve, which I think feeds into kind of the creative process as well. Um,
Sure.
and then also just in terms of like the friendships, like not all of the friends that I made from like through Quakerism would even necessarily still class themselves as Quakers, but I think there's some kind of like affinity and trust that we still have. I think like maybe through coming together in a kind of faith group, or maybe it's the kind of people that are drawn to exploring Quakerism, even if they then don't necessarily aren't Quakers for life.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that kind of like quite a few of the people who helped like out on the film are people that I know through Quakerism.
Oh,
And
really?
I think that's not like, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think um, it allows just like bonds of trust and like mutual helping um, in a way that like no other community I've been part of as an adult has done.
So you've then got into filming, and we are here obviously because you successfully received funding from Quakers in Britain to help you achieve that. So do you maybe want to take us through the background of the film and how that whole process began?
So I first kind of got into filmmaking during the first lockdown. So prior to that, I'd um, done like I had been interested in like creative pursuits, like not to sound too pretentious, but like I guess I'd done like, literary translation and also like um, wrote some not particularly good like short stories myself, but I
Yeah.
hadn't particularly like considered um, like filmmaking as something that I could do. Um, then during the lockdown, I think I had some kind of like idea that I thought it would be good to make as a short film. I can't actually remember exactly what the idea was, if it was the one that later inspired the short film I made with the Quake funding or not. But anyway, I did an online course during the lockdown, like making a short film in 5 evenings with City Lit,
Mm,
which is like a further education college in London.
mm,
And we had to make the film because it was locked down, just like using what kind of people who were in our bubble or who we lived with,
sure.
and like I guess and filming it in our houses.
Yeah.
So I ended up. It was actually quite useful to have those constraints. Otherwise, I think I would have found it much harder in a way to come up with something that was doable. So I ended up making a film starring one of my
Mm,
housemates and also a stuffed toy penguin that I had. Um, and it was um, just really, really fun. And I wanted to carry on doing um, like films. So then I did a certificate with the National Film and Television School, which is again mostly like online because of lockdowns, um,
yeah.
in like filmmaking, and then did some filmmaking training with Four Corners Studio in London.
Yeah.
Um, And then after that, I kind of felt like, okay, I want to kind of make something like of my own now because in those like courses or training, we'd often been kind of working on like projects that had been set as part of the curriculum. So I had this idea of making a short film set at a swing dance, um, and that idea kind of grew out of an image that came to me at some point of a young woman at a swing dance, like social event,
Mm,
standing in the toilets and kind of looking at the mirror, and there was this feeling that I got when I had this image of like she's not kind of like she's not fully comfortable here, and she doesn't like she has mixed feelings about going back into the swing dance
mm,
arena. Um,
yeah.
and that I guess became like the basis for the like script that I wrote.
Mm.
Um, and then once I had this script, it was a case of, well, like, where do I go from here? Um,
Right. Yeah.
and like in hindsight, I think as like the the first kind of short film that you're like independently filming, it is
Mm.
not necessarily a great idea to have a script which involves like 40 people who are going to be
Yeah.
dancing,
Yeah.
like lots of different rooms,
Mm.
because it ended up being really like quite a big job to pull it all together. One of the things I also knew from the beginning was that I wanted this to be something where people weren't having to kind of work for free, because in a lot of kind of like student projects or like very early career projects, like cast and crew are being asked to give up their time for no money.
Yeah.
And I also knew that I wanted it to be a bit different to maybe like a typical film set where there'd be very much like a male dominate like dominated puts too negative a spin on it, but a majority male crew.
Mm. Sure.
And like historically, it's often been not a particularly welcoming place as a woman, particularly if you're a woman doing maybe one of the more technical jobs like on camera or on sound. Yeah, so I had a few kind of different desires for the film that I wanted to find a way to put into practice, and that's kind of where I started to think about like how am I gonna get any like the money together to do
Mm.
this.
And why was it? What was it about swing dancing? Oh, in terms of what the inspiration? Why was that such? Why was that image? How did that image come about in your mind?
Mm. Um, so I had discovered swing dance, which I had kind of never heard of before. I think in about like 2017, when I went to some solo jazz dance classes. I was
Mm.
living somewhere where there wasn't a lot on, but one of the things that was happening was solo jazz. So like I've never been someone who was particularly good at dance or even particularly interested in dance, but I went along and really enjoyed it. And
Mm.
then when I moved to London, like I think the following year, I started going to like Lindy Hop, like partnered swing dance classes,
Yeah.
and again really enjoyed that, like to my surprise. Um, and there's quite a like big swing dance scene in London, I suppose. And
I should hope so. Yeah.
as well as there being like lots of classes that are taking place, there's also
Mm.
like these swing dance socials that take place, um, where like over 100 people might be there, and you kind of just are all in this like really big hall, and you like can ask people to dance or people ask you to dance, and it's just like I guess I had never been to a social dance before, so like this was kind of new idea to me. It like it felt a
Yeah.
bit, I suppose, like being in a Pride and Prejudice novel,
Yeah.
where you're kind of
Walking around the room, but and being asked to dance, and
yeah, exactly. Um, and so the biggest one of these one of the biggest swing dance events in London happens at the Bishopsgate Institute, near Liverpool Street, and
okay.
um,
Yeah.
that's the kind of one that I often went to.
Mm.
And I think in terms of like why swing dance was kind of sufficiently, I guess, a big part of my psyche at that point to kind of make it into my idea for a film. Um,
Yeah.
I think as kind of growing up and in my early 20s, I tended to like gravitate towards quite, I guess, cerebral activities or interests. Um, like I was quite academic at school, and then also spent quite a lot of my free time doing like translation, um, and that's all fine and good. But I think actually maybe I was missing something in terms of like learning using my body rather than necessarily my mind. And in doing swing dance, there was that kind of sense of like learning like through action and doing rather than through thinking. I guess awakened something.
Hmm.
And that it's also um, just like there's a lot of joy in the dance. Like even though it grew out, I suppose, of the experience of black people in like 20s and 30s America, there are like aspects of it where you can see how it is a reaction to like oppression, and
Hmm.
both then and also like in the history of like black Americans. But at the same time, it does have this joy to it, which I think struck me quite deeply. Um, and also at the same time, there's a kind of like nervous anticipation, like anxiousness, I guess, about being at one of the swing dance events, like and um, feelings like, oh, like is anyone going to ask me to dance? Can I ask
Yeah.
that person to dance? Like, is that person going to think that I'm a bad dancer? And so there's a kind of like a mix of kind of heightened emotional response, and as well as like being very present in your body, that I think like seeped into my unconscious maybe, so that when I had this idea for a film, that was where it was set, and like I knew that even though the image that came into my head wasn't of people dancing, I knew that it was set at a swing dance event.
I like how you set that up as more than just, I would just love dancing and just thinking about how like the how that can be a whole body experience and how you
Yeah,
engage how it could be sort of going above something that's where it's just people dancing to you're talking about confidence, self-confidence, individuality. I've got to ask with translation, what languages are you translating from? This is an aside. I'm a languages
yeah,
teacher.
yeah. I only translate from one language, which is German.
This was died. Sorry, Quaker listeners. We've just decided to do the whole thing now in German. On a bit of an aside,
Mm.
as apart from the German aside, an aside
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
side, are you aware that that in yearly meeting that there's an opportunity to do meeting for worship through dance?
I haven't. I didn't actually know that was something that existed. Is it a recent kind of
I don't.
introduction, or has it
I
been
do
around
not.
for a while?
I do not know. But I would be interested to find out. No, I'm too scared to do it. Too scared. I don't know. I don't know what I'd be doing.
Yeah,
Having no dancing experience at all.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I have great. I don't know. I always just find my body. I, I feel like it can't move. I know it's probably just because I've never done it. Like with everything, you need to be, you have to be taught. But I just feel like I can't. I People in the very rare occasions where that's happened to me, people tell me like sort of teach you like you need to move this, move your leg here, move your arm
mm,
here, and I
mm.
can't do it. I can't do it at all. Would you be up for it? I suppose would be the follow up question.
I have to be careful what I say here. I think yes. I think I have to say if I hadn't had any kind of dance classes, I think I'd be more reticent, because where it's just like a kind of like you're free to move however you want, I think that can feel a bit more vulnerable than if you're doing like some set moves that you've learned. Um,
Mm.
so I think yes. I mean, if I'm allowed to do Quaker meeting worship in the style of swing dance, I think that would probably
Wow.
tick the right box.
Well, I think yearly meeting. I think they're creating their schedule. So I
I
mean,
mean,
if you want to say, I think the meeting for dance is too broad. I want it just to be swing dance, please. And I don't know. I also find it strange considering like I have no musical background. I think these in like both of the last conversational videos I've done, I've mentioned this, so it's obviously on my mind.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe this year is the year. All right then. So then we've got this idea of a film. We all know, and because you sort of saying as well that you don't want this film to be one where people are doing it voluntarily. You want to pay them for their work and their time. But obviously that costs money. Where are you going to get that from? So do you want to, having read your Instagram posts and stuff, I think I've sort of seen like the kind of the process that is, and the highs and lows and that. Do you want to maybe just talk about that, and then how it ended up that that you got to applying for Quaker funding?
I guess my first step in the process was trying to work out how much money I would need.
Mm.
And I hadn't, in like the student like courses that I'd done, I hadn't had to actually like budget for like a proper film. So it was like very new for me. There was a web template on the British Film Institute website, which kind of sets out the different types of areas that you're going to need money for. So both like so cast and then like the different crew sections. So like as someone who was still relatively new to film, I hadn't kind of got experience of all the like what different departments are involved in a film set, but as well as like the camera department and the sound department, there's also like lighting and production design who are like responsible for
Mm.
the look of the film, I guess, in terms of what's what everything that you can see basically on the screen,
Mm.
um,
Mm.
and but also just thinking about things like transporting like the equipment from the like rental house to the venue, like the cost of the venue itself, the cost of things like getting parking permits so that
Oh gosh.
like people can like when they bring the equipment can just get straight to the location. Also the cost of like permission to shoot on the street. So some of like one of the
Ah, yeah,
scenes
yeah.
of the film is actually outside the house that the swing dance is set in,
Mm.
and like that cost money to like to pay the local film office to be able to just have like access to that street, even though it was just like for half an hour. So there was lots of like lots of different costs to factor
Mm.
in. Once I had like made those calculations, I thought that we'd need about £5,000. And it turned out that was an underestimate, but it's the
As it
first
always
time I was
is.
doing first time I was doing it, so it goes. So then I thought, well, how am I going to get this £5,000?
Mm.
And it was at this point either I thought about the Quakers, or maybe it was one of my Quaker friends like mentioned the Living Adventurously Grant, and I feel like I should be
Mm.
honest about it because like it's not that I um like planned my project as like a Quaker project and then went to the Quakers for
Mm.
funding.
Mm.
If like I hadn't had this need of making £5,000, I might not have like come to conceive of this project as something that was kind of a form of bearing witness. Um,
Mm.
but it was knowing that that potential like funding was available that made me like reflect on, well, do I think that this is at all something that could be called like living adventurously, like could this be a form of witness? And
Mm.
initially I was I think quite reluctant to give that possibility any like credence, because I think I just thought I'm just telling myself that this is like spirit led so that I can get this money. Um,
Sure.
but then I thought, well, I'll at least have like a meeting for clearness around this, because I guess it would be good to see what like people who don't have this kind of potential bias also think. So
Can,
as part,
can I pause you there just to
yeah,
just
yeah,
talk about, because meeting for clearness is amazing, and but I think would you mind just explaining what that is
yeah,
for maybe
yeah,
people who
yeah,
don't know,
yeah,
because I think it's a great thing that Quakers do, which
mm,
people, which I don't think is really like advertised at all as something that Quakers do, but I think is really helpful. So I love that you've done that. Would you mind just talking about what it is and how you did it?
yeah. So I don't know if this is how every meeting for clearness works. I've only ever been in one meeting for clearness, um,
Mm.
but basically, like me and three other Quakers that I know um, met on Zoom, and they asked me some like gentle questions about. But I kind of brought the topic, which is like, is this project like spirit led?
Mm.
And they just asked some like a few questions, and gave me opportunity to reflect, I suppose, on whether it's spirit led. And it wasn't that at
Mm,
the end we were all kind of like took a vote or whatever on whether it's spirit led. Um,
mm,
I don't think we even in the meeting in this meeting like came to any kind of like shared conclusion. Um,
mm.
it was more just, I was going to say sounding board. That isn't quite right because it wasn't just me kind of like bouncing ideas off them. It was very much like they came with their own kind of questions, and their questions helped me to make more sense than I would have been able to make by myself. I don't know whether that's um, what meeting for
Yeah,
clearness is like
I mean,
always.
yeah, well, I think it's about like, I think like with everything in Quakers never vote. Quakers never come to, if Quakers can come to a conclusion, but it's not like by anyone making the decision like this is
Mm,
how we should do it. Uh, I was interviewing Mark Ross earlier, who said that one of his favourite Quaker phrases that he uses a lot at the moment is the phrase "are all hearts clear." And I think that's sort of what you need to get to at the end of a meeting for clearness. That it's like I feel like I've cleared my heart of my intention, and that the people who are talking about it have said everything that they think they need to say in terms of supporting that person and upholding the project
mm.
and the intention and so on. And so, what was going from that? What were your considerations, and how did you see that this was a form of witness?
What it helped me to kind of clarify was what I understood by spirit led. I think I've often heard other Quakers talking about witness in the context of like non-violent direct action.
Mm, yeah.
And so in my head, I think that's like maybe how I've tended to like characterize witness um, and spirit and like something being spirit led.
Mm,
But I also like am aware that actually maybe that's not how everyone does witness, and try to kind of get down to a sense of like what the core aspect of witness is for me. And it felt like if witness is anything, then it's something that is both kind of life giving to the person doing it and
mm,
also seeks to do some kind of good in the world, whatever that may be. For me, even like so, when I've taken part in like non-violent direct actions, it's often actually not been particularly life giving. If I'm honest, like I've often felt like pretty like shaken and not particularly good afterwards.
mm,
And the things that I do, which feel like more life giving and also, but still like doing something good, are like like creative things
mm,
which I can share with other people, and also like taking care of people. Um, so like I'm a speech therapist. Like what one of my jobs is as a speech therapist, and like that for me can feel like witness. But also just things like looking after friends when they're unwell or whatever also
mm,
feels like witness. Um, and so I brought those kind of ideas to my consideration of like, could this film project be described as witness? And I guess it, in terms of it being like something creative that I wanted to like share with the world, um, and like yes, um, and also the fact like the content of the film itself felt um, like the I guess message to the extent it has a message felt like one that was positive to share. Like I guess that it has themes of like female empowerment and also sustainability. In terms of I guess we'll talk about the themes maybe more later,
mm,
but like it felt like that was relevant. Um, but also I guess it made me think about how I want to like create what kind of like set I want to create in terms of like how the crew and cast are treated, um,
mm,
and like how inclusive it is compared to like maybe a standard film set, and that again felt like it could be a form of witness.
I felt the same because I also applied for the Living Adventurously Grant. That's how Quaked Up
Mm,
kind of started. And yeah, I think there too often, I think Quakers associate witness with something that it must be, as you say, non-violent protest. It must be
yeah,
something like political and out there and changing the world. But there's many ways to change the world. And and as you say, I like this idea of life giving as well. I think um, that's got to be, by changing the world, we can't necessarily always be changing policies and
mm,
changing government action. Sometimes it's really down at the local level and giving people that agency, giving people that sense of worth, and telling a story and spreading that message. So I think absolutely. So now we have the money, we can make the film.
yeah,
But tell us about it. We've got this idea of this woman sort of dealing with self doubt in the toilet of a swing social. But
mm, mm.
what is the film called? What is it about? And then we'll talk
Mhm.
about maybe a bit about like some of the production of that and how that's gone.
Yeah. So the film is called Sugar Push, which is the name of a swing dance move.
I looked
Um,
this up. I looked this up. I know precisely what it is now.
yeah,
It's kind of like
uh,
it is a push. They have to sort of like they come and then they go away. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
Um,
I was proud to
and
share that. But
um, that's great. I'm glad to have been like widening the swing dance circle a bit more.
absolutely.
Um, it was actually called a lot of different things before I came to the title of Sugar Push. I think it
Mm.
was originally called There Will Be Blood, like There Will Be Blood, in reference to the Coen Brothers film. But and menstrual blood does feature in the film, but then
Mm.
I think in discussion with the cinematographer, that felt like maybe it's a bit too on the nose, and didn't quite capture what the film was really about. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
get that.
eventually, I think I settled on Sugar Push because, I mean, partly because it is a swing dance move, but also I
Hmm.
suppose there's something both like the sweetness of sugar, but then the kind of resistance of the push, which
Sure. Yeah.
felt like it kind of maybe mirrored uh the journey in the film itself. So it follows a young woman who's arriving at her first swing dance social event,
Hmm.
um, who is kind of a bit like a bit awkward, like a bit unsure of herself.
Mm.
And then I guess it follows her journey into finding a way where she feels comfortable to like join the event and like take her place on the dance floor, I suppose.
Yeah.
Without maybe wanting to give too much away, like um, she like one of the things that I've often found quite maybe slightly nerve wracking, or maybe have made me feel slightly out of place at like swing dance events, is that often um, like there are some people who take it like really seriously in terms of like how they dress and
Mm.
like hair and makeup, and will go like
Right.
full on like 20s or 30s kind of outfit,
Yeah.
and like very like glamorous in their appearance, and that's never been something that I'm particularly like into. um
Mm.
I'm both kind of try and be like grounded in myself in that, but also it can feel a bit like, oh, I'm a bit out of place here.
Mm.
And so in the film, basically this young woman ends up like she's in the bathroom at some point, like kind of I guess hiding away from the event, and
Mm.
she's also on her period. I don't really know exactly where this idea came from me, but she basically ends up using blood from her moon cup as lipstick. So it's like she's kind of joining in with the like making herself feel a bit like glam, but she's kind of
Mm.
doing it on her own terms, on terms which other people might find kind of revolting. But
Yes.
I suppose I've also never been that like disgusted by menstrual blood in the way that I think maybe it's often presented in films as being quite disgusting. Like I'm thinking of like Carrie, or whatever. Um,
Mm.
and so I wanted to, um, yeah, I wanted to subvert that, I suppose.
When first sort of introduced to this topic, I was given two very different things about what was in this film, and
Yeah,
I was looking for the connection. Saying before we started filming, I didn't let you tell me. I wanted to know what is the link between
yeah,
menstrual
yeah,
cups and swing dancing. So
yeah,
there we are. So how long did this all take? Is it done? What was it
yeah.
like?
It most certainly is not done. So we shot it in November 2023 over like one weekend, and we
Mm,
shot it at House of Annetta, which is a kind of social centre in off Brick Lane. So here it's probably relevant to say also that because I'd underestimated how much it would cost,
mm,
I then like we had run out of money by the end of the
mm.
filming. Um, so in terms of then like finding an editor and like a like a sound
Post
designer,
production.
there was no money for like the post production things. Um, and at that point, I still like really like wanted to be finding like early career editors or like post production people and like be paying them for what they'd done, the same as we'd done for the like cast and crew
Crew.
who were there
Yeah.
for the like shoot itself. So I spent then like a few months applying for more grants. Sadly, there were no more
Mm,
Quaker grants
yeah.
left. So so it was a case of applying to just like general film
Mm,
like grant money pots. There's I think a lot more, well there is a lot more competition for them than for
yeah.
a Living Adventurously grant.
Yeah. I can see
And
it.
like for one for one of the grants, for example, when I submitted my application, they were like, "Sorry, we've already had like 400 submissions, so we're not taking any more." So,
Yeah. Fair.
to cut a long story short, like after about like 6 or 9 months of like preparing like grant submission forms, like waiting for the like um submissions to open, like waiting to hear back, I kind of realized like this is not gonna, I think, be a way that I get any more money to like
Mm,
to work towards this film. So then um, I kind of thought like, well, like what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to um, just I don't want to have to do another crowdfunder because like my family and friends had already like given so generously,
yeah.
and I guess
For doing
and the family and friends of the other like two crew members who I kind of worked most closely on in developing the film.
mm,
I didn't feel like I then wanted to go back and be like, oh, by the way, um, we've spent all the money. Can you give us some more?
yeah. Yeah. I
So
get that.
it kind like the other one of the other people who was had worked on the film was a friend of mine who I'd done a training who I'd done the Four Corners filmmaking training
Mm,
with, and he also like had some editing experience, but he wasn't like a professional editor or someone who was particularly looking for experience in editing.
mm,
But in the and like me and him and he's called Nick and Giacomo had we'd all gone into this film kind of together, like voluntarily doing it for free as a way of us like getting some experience.
yeah.
So even though I had wanted to like get a professional editor, um, so this makes it sound like Nick's just like my last resort, which he both, I guess, being honest about it, he was my last resort. But I'm very happy that it got to the
Yeah.
stage where we were just like, let's just do it together.
All's
Because,
well that ends well.
well, I mean, it hasn't quite ended yet, but it
Ending.
all's well that's ending well.
Yeah.
Shakespeare's unwritten play. It has been like such a joy to work on it together with Nick and
Mm,
to like learn from him and him also to be kind of feeling like he's actually learning from everything that I did wrong in my directing
Yeah.
choices, which like I'm really happy that like that is useful for him. Um,
Yeah.
so, but the like I guess the flip side of it is that because neither of us is like professional filmmakers, it's taking
Mm,
like we've met like I'd say like 5 or 6 times now and like worked on like just getting the rough like cut together
mm.
and we're still not quite at the end. Um, so we're meeting in I think just over a week. Fingers crossed that we might actually finish the rough cut like then. Um, it's taken a really long time. And
Mm.
like I kind of thought, oh, like it'll take like a couple of months in post production and then we're done. Um, it hasn't been like that, and I'm also just aware that I've like promised to like do a special interest group at YFGM on the film like once it's finished and
Mm.
as part of the Living Adventurously like funding
Yeah.
application, and that I haven't been able to deliver that. So like I am now just like really wanting it to be like out there in the world so that I can
I can imagine.
well so where we are now is nearly at the end of the first like I
The
guess
first
rough
edit.
cut. And then I basically have was able to like save some money through like having cheaper rent because I was staying at a friend's place, and have also
Mm.
so then I decided like I would just put some more of my own money in, um,
Yeah.
and then use that to um, like pay for a sound designer, which like I realize is I guess like quite privileged to position to be in to be able to like put my own money towards a creative project, but also feels like the only kind of way that it's going to get out
It's
there in
gonna
the
get
world
done.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when do you think you're gonna I mean, is that this? I know that's if you were gonna
When
if
will
you're
it
gonna
be
be
done? Do you mean?
when yes, but I don't want to say it like
Yeah.
that because I know
No, no,
it's
no, no.
not that simple.
I
It's
think realistically, if it's not done by June this year, I think something's gone very wrong. So I'm hoping that
within
in
June.
June it it will
And
be out there.
and when you're ready to actually release it. How are you going to plan on doing that? Is that going to be how will it be
Yeah,
shared with the world?
like for short films, there's quite a lot of short film festivals that
Mm,
like exist, and so I think our first like before it goes out on like Vimeo and is freely available, usually
yeah,
film festivals don't want you to have done that part yet. So
right.
I think we'll like there'll be like a year where it maybe gets shown at well if any of them accept it, who knows,
Sure. Yeah,
where
yeah,
it potentially gets accepted at some like short film festivals.
yeah,
Though we are also planning to do like a um either online or in person, I'm not sure yet, like screening for like people who were involved and like family and friends, um
mm.
and uh, like maybe have like a bit of a Q&A session with some of the cast and crew.
Ah,
But then after that kind of, I think it's like a festival circuit,
yeah,
then I just want it to be like freely available on probably on like on YouTube or Vimeo. I think like short films are not something that like generally people like expect to like really make any like money from. It's they're
yeah,
mostly
yeah,
seen as like your calling card in the
yeah.
film industry. Um, so I'm not like expecting uh like any Hollywood deals for it.
Never say never. I say this even with my videos. I finish editing them. Well, you never know. Hollywood might come calling. That's cool though. But then you got to keep in touch and let me know because then when it's out and I do not mind sharing with the Quaker Dev audience that about the progress of it. I think that'd be really
That's
cool.
very sweet. You might want to watch it
Yeah.
first.
Oh send it over and I will happily. But I'm sure I will anyway. I mean, it's very interesting. Um, I've been it's been really good because, as I said, very different sort of angle on the Quake on the living up. living adventurously,
Yeah.
living it up. Oh goodness me, living adventurously, Grant.
Living it up
Um,
adventurously.
yeah, living it up adventurously, sort of combining the two
So
together.
let
Right.
me,
So we've come to
yeah,
the end, and
yeah.
as I do with all of these, I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions about Quakerism and generally and stuff. My first question is, who is your favourite Quaker, Iwona, and why?
Um, so I think my
Yeah,
favourite
sure. Mm,
Quaker, like beyond ones that I know and love personally, is probably James Naylor. Um, Mostly because I do
mm.
find the image of him like riding into Bristol like on donkey, just both incredibly like potent but also very funny. And I think maybe humour can be sometimes underestimated. Um, and I love like mischief and boldness and humour.
I'm glad you brought up James Naylor. I do wonder how Quakerism would be different if George Fox had ridden into Bristol instead, and James Naylor was the main dude in early Quakerism. I think that would have been very interesting. It's obviously tragic how it ends, but uh, that in itself, as you say, I haven't thought about the certain aspect
Yeah.
of the comic in that because he wasn't actually thinking he was Jesus, and so it was obviously a display. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
obviously a he was putting he was putting something forward that isn't true, and so there's always that. Say with acting and with anything, when it's a
yeah.
performance like that, there is always an element of the uncanny and the comic in that because it's something that isn't true, and that in of itself is funny. But
Mm,
because it's funny, maybe or uncanny,
yeah,
it's that probably was one of the reasons why it was so you know, absolutely like beyond the pale for 17th century Englishmen. We are in the age bracket of young Quakers, which goes on probably longer than probably it should. I don't know, but with that being said, then so as the next generation coming on, what would you like to see more of in Quakerism? What do you think that Quakerism does well, and what do you think it needs to do in order to keep garnering,
mm,
getting people interested and getting people coming?
yeah. Um, it's something that I have wondered about, and I guess I mean the fair like just one like concrete thing which I think would help young people like the next generation to keep coming is um just like I guess not being asked like not asking young people at meeting
Mm,
like what university do you go to like which I know like might sound a bit silly but I think um there there's kind of a whole
yeah.
like there's quite a lot packed up in that like opening question like there's like oh I've noticed that you're young and like drawing attention on that and but then there's also the
Hmm.
like I guess assumption that people go to university um and it's just a question that I've been asked quite a
Yeah.
few times when I've like gone to a new Quaker meeting and can I suppose I think feel a bit like othering um but then like going from I suppose like a very like micro point to maybe like a more macro level like one of the things that I wonder about is the
Mm,
like radical in Quakerism and it feels like so in like the early days of
mm,
Quakerism the style of worship was like radical um whereas now it can sometimes feel like our radicalism's more in
yeah.
our like protest action rather than maybe sometimes in like our meetings themselves.
I think that's the thing that a lot of people, especially a lot of young people, are thinking. Um, it's this sense of vibrancy, I suppose, and you just read about the early friends, and you're just like, wow, like that. I wouldn't want to be in 17th century
Mm.
prison, but I would like to be in a 17th century
Yeah,
like meeting. Like that would be incredible. And so, how do we bring that? It's how do we
yeah,
bring that? And I think that's something that I'm going to try and cover this year and try and see if I can nail like some good things that we can do because it can't always be about political activism because some people like really fantastic Quakers just aren't
yeah,
that isn't something that speaks to them and it speaks to a very specific type of Quaker, and we need those
Yeah.
Quakers. But there's a whole other aspect that we can be radical. And as you say, the early friends were radical in all their senses. It was how they were in the world, how they were in their meeting as well. And we kind of do one, and maybe I think we're maybe the other one needs to be looked at. I feel like I've learned a lot getting ready for this video, and also learned a lot finally getting to the nitty gritty of the plot lines of this film. I wish you all the success in that final editing phase. I do know how that can be, and that's just for like a 20-minute video, let alone like a whole like film with like all the stuff. So thank you very much for coming on as well and talking about it. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for watching the video. If you liked it, please do click on the thumbs up and the subscribe button to get more videos about Quakerism in the UK today. It really does help, and thanks once again.